Welcome to Aggie Horticulture Facebook Live. My name is Skip Richter. I'm the horticulture agent in Brazos County, and I'm going to be talking to you today about finding research-based gardening information online. There is a wealth of information out there online about gardening. Much of it is just flat untrue or maybe not applicable to the area where you live. So how do you go about finding sources that give you research-based or evidence-based information? That's what we're going to be talking about today. Have you heard this one? How to tell a male bell pepper from a female bell pepper. Well, according to this website, a male only has 3 bumps and a female has 4 bumps. Now, both of these bell peppers are the reproductive structure of the fruit itself is a reproductive structure of the bell pepper plant, and it has seeds inside. So it's basically an ovary with seeds inside. They're both female. There's no such thing as a male or female bell pepper. But this is just one of 1,000 examples of things you run into online that are just flat not true. And what we would like to do today is cut to the chase and look for some places where we can get more accurate information. Well, I'm going to start with some AgriLife resources, of course. I do want to say that I'm going to be giving you a lot of URLs as we go through the day. So don't try to write down all the websites. There will be a page posted to Aggie Horticulture with all of them on it that you can download yourself, and then you can go back later and check all of these out. So I'm going to be moving kind of quickly, so don't try to write down all the URLs or you get very frustrated very quickly. Well, the first one is the aggieturf.tamu.edu website. This is the source of all of our online information here in the horticulture department at Texas A&M. One thing I want to point out to you about this website is up in the top right corner is a Google custom search. There are a lot of things in Aggie Horticulture that you won't find when you go to these icons on the main page. They're kind of hidden back in a corner. But with a search, you can hunt all the way through the website and find the things you need. Some of the picture pages are excellent with groups of photos on various kinds of plants, such as houseplants or interior plants, for example. There are many, many picture pages that are very helpful. So use that search bar when you're in Aggie Horticulture. Aggie Turf is also an excellent website. Lots of good information. The thing that I primarily would encourage you to check out, or down at the bottom, there's information on turf grasses, but kind of right there in the middle is turf grass weeds. There is a great list of weeds, the most common weeds you're likely to find there in that website with pictures of them, and I think you'll find that to be very helpful if your questions are about turf or about weeds in turf grass. The Plant Clinic at A&M, Dr. Ong leads the Plant Clinic here. It's our disease diagnostic laboratory where you see the submission forms that you can send. But also, I want to point out on here that there's a great resource called the Texas Plant Disease Handbook. That basically is a series of pages showing some of the more common diseases that come in on each type of crop. There's a section for vegetables and a section for landscape type plants. And you can look maybe under tomatoes, for example, and see what are the most common tomato problems that the Plant Clinic has encountered over the years. So that would be very helpful. Let's talk about a few sites for plant identification. The first one is texastreeid.tamu.edu, Texas Tree ID. In this one, it tells you how to identify a tree. You can identify them by their leaf. You can look at a list of the different trees. Lots of good information if you're out there trying to identify what particular kind of tree you might have that's applicable here in Texas. There's also, for native types of plants or wild plants, rangeland plants, if you will, there's this website, rangeplants.tamu.edu, help identify my plant. And this is great. You can pick them by the flower color, by the distribution. What part of the state are you in? Are you on the South Texas Plains or the Post Oaks Savanna, or maybe the High Plains up in North Texas, up in the Panhandle? There's also collections such as wildflowers and brush and weeds. Lots of good information, and if you click on that virtual herbarium spot, you will see a lot of different plants that you can go and find by also by alphabetical order. Very good for native types of plants. One of my favorite resources for plant identification is Google Lens. Now, there are a lot of apps out there that are for identifying plants, and I've tried a bunch of different ones, and some are better than others. Many of them, though, I find maybe haven't been to Texas a lot. In other words, some of our native plants around here, they're not going to know. But Google Lens is pretty good, and of course it's just getting better as more people use it. The Google Lens, you can see there at the top, that is an Android type of emblem that you will see. You can download the Google Lens app for Android. If you have an Apple phone, you can go to Google Photos and download that, and Google Lens is included in Google Photos. You can look at, you can take a picture of a plant and identify it, or you can take a picture that you already have in your phone and use that to try to identify it. And here's just a picture of the example of a phone. The Google Lens finds the flower in the center, and then it gives you some options. I found that it often doesn't hit it on the head, but it often gets me close enough to where then I can continue my search. This is great for insects, and I'll talk about that more in just a moment. But the key thing on Google Lens is it needs to know what you're wanting to identify. If you stand at the edge of the woods and just take a picture of 500 plants in front of you, it doesn't know which one you want. So you want to really make sure that plant or plant part is standing out where it knows what in this big photo it is supposed to identify, and that will be very helpful. Excellent app. I encourage you to play with it. For insect identification, Texas High Plains Insects is one of the best sites that we have in the Extension Network. You will find here, even though it says High Plains, there is a lot of good information. You'll see the most common insects. You can click on that. You can get them by their group. Maybe it's a beetle, maybe it's a true bug, maybe it's a caterpillar or a butterfly or a spider, and you kind of narrow it down to that. But there's two things on this page that are extremely useful if you're trying to identify insects. One of them, I already mentioned Google Lens, but number two here, you see that there is a short video. Dr. Irfan Vaife up in Overton has put together a short video on how to use Google Lens for identifying insects. And if you just want to click on that, those blue words there, you can go see how to do it, kind of an example. I think that'll be very helpful. The other thing is, if you can't find your insect and you live in Texas, there's a link where you can submit an insect identification request. You fill out a form online and you can attach photos to that form. Again, the identification is going to be best if your photos are close and in clear, sharp focus. If they are the least bit fuzzy, some insect identification is very microscopic and they need to be able to look really close at some markings on the insect to identify it. So the quality of your photo is critical here, and that's true really of identifying anything. texasinsects.tamu.edu is a field guide that's organized by the order of the insect, but fortunately they put the type of insect that's in that order out to the side. So you don't have to know, look at the second one down there, you don't have to know that Coleoptera is beetles and weevils. It tells you. So if you find a little beetle, you want to identify it, you click on Coleoptera, and they're going to give you some of the more common beetles, for example, that we would have here in Texas. If you're interested in beneficial insects, the best site that I've run across in the country, the single one site where you can get the most information, is from the University of California Extension IPM program. That's their land grant out there. And there is a section on natural enemies of this IPM website, and they list them by predators, parasites. You can look at them by their order in the family name, or by the scientific name, or by the pest that they attack. And this is a long scrolling page. I just have a picture of the top of it here. But if you look down, you can see it says predators, and then it has assassin bugs and big-eyed bugs. You scroll down and you'll see all the parasites. Those are the cool things that get inside an insect, you know, like the movie Alien, and they eat it from the inside out. And just a wealth of good information there. That's from University of California. If you want good pesticide information, the one stop is the National Pesticide Information Center at the Oregon State University, the Oregon's land-grant college, and there's all kinds of information here. Information on pests and pesticides. This particular page, when I took the image, was on houseplant IPM. But let's say you've heard about this new insecticide called spinosad that's organic. Well, you can go search and find it. And here's the page just on spinosad. What is spinosad? What are products that contain spinosad? How does it work? What are some signs and symptoms from exposure to spinosad? What happens when it enters the body? Is it likely to cause cancer? Has anyone studied non-cancer effects from long-term exposure to spinosad? Are children more sensitive than adults? Now, this isn't organic that we're talking about, but all pesticides have their pros and cons. And so if you really want to search for good, accurate information, nobody's got an axe to grind and nobody is trying to sell a product here. The National Pesticide Information Center, again, that's managed by Oregon State, is an awesome place to go find that kinds of information. Another thing I want to talk about a little bit, and this is, I think, critical. Maybe in some ways this may be the most important thing that I talk about, and that is how do you do an effective Google search. Now, we've all been to Google and hunted for things before, but for example, if you're looking for lawn disease information, there is the open search, which is something like this. You type lawn disease into Google, and then there's a restricted search. So let's look at open first. If you type lawn disease into Google, you will find this kind of result. The first one, how to identify lawn diseases from Scotts & Company. Well, obviously that's a commercial company. That doesn't mean that their information isn't accurate. It just means they are selling something. The next one down is Milorganite. Then there's the spruce, which is kind of a gardening type website. Yard Care from Toro, the lawnmower company, Turf Magazine, and all the way down almost to the bottom, you finally get to an extension resource, which is Lawn Diseases Prevention and Management from the University of California. So if on the other hand, instead of just lawn diseases, we added after a space site:/.edu, what you're saying is, Google, I want you to return to me all the great sites you have on lawn diseases, but I only want you to look in places that are websites that end in .edu, site:/.edu. Some people say you can just you don't have to put the site:. I usually do. I know that works well. So if we do lawn diseases site:/.edu, now let's look at the results that we get. We get lawn diseases prevention and management from University of California. Then there's one from University of Wisconsin. The next one is extension in Illinois. There's the A&M Plant Disease Handbook, Penn State's Plant Science Department, the University of Florida Extension Gardening Solutions, the University of Delaware Extension. Do you see what that did? It took us to university resources and what they have to say about lawn diseases. Now, if you read about lawn diseases in Wisconsin, well, number one, you're dealing with different kinds of grass, and you're also dealing with different diseases. So that doesn't mean it's applicable to Texas. It just means that it's research-based information. So with some things, that's not very helpful because it's from another area. But with other things, it's very, very helpful. You can also search for site:/.tamu.edu. So if we put site:/.tamu.edu into our search, here is what we would get. The Plant Disease Handbook from A&M, Aggie-Horticulture, Bexar County's extension website with an article on brown patch, the Soil and Crop Department lawn disease article, it's kind of a news article, and then aggieturf.tamu.edu. So you can narrow this down, and this doesn't just work for A&M. You could do site:/.Oklahoma State or whatever their particular website is, how it ends, but here we're tamu.edu. So those are great ways to narrow your search. If you want to search just extension, not just .edu, which would include university in general, but just extension, you can look at extension.org/search, and here is another website. You can go to this particular website, and I think on this one, I believe right there is the search bar for it. I typed in fire ants, and I did an extension search nationally at that website on fire ants. So fireants.tamu.edu, the University of Florida, another fireant.tamu.edu, Mississippi State, we got us a southern pest here, right? The University of Florida, and then Arkansas. So we narrowed our search down on fire ants, cut through all the commercial, everybody's opinion across the fence, and got right down to what the researchers have to say. Your camera phone and a 10 power even loop make a great digital microscope. These little loops are what a jeweler would use to examine a ring and find out if it's really a diamond or a cubic zirconia or whatever, to look at the facets of it. But you can put your little finger through there and hold it in front of your camera as you hold your camera, and go right down on something and zoom in amazingly well. And take a look at this. That is a penny on my Samsung phone, and I have put the little loop behind the camera lens, and I've zoomed in. You know how you can pinch in and out to zoom in even further? That's Abraham Lincoln's nose on a penny, and it's 1/16 of an inch long. So that's about the width of a grain of rice. So you can see, imagine a little aphid just becomes a monster on your screen. So not only do you get a microscope with the deal, but you can take a really good quality picture to send in for identification, whether it's to the entomologist or to your county agent or our plant pathology perhaps. But you can also take a video and you can watch things happen. And I encourage people to take advantage of getting out there and learning how to do things in the garden, learning what's going on. This is on the right-hand side, or one of those salad containers like you would buy maybe mixed greens in at the grocery store. They make a great rearing chamber. These are some kale leaves that had a particular caterpillar I wasn't familiar with. And so we put them in a little jar of water, put them inside there, and we're going to let those caterpillars grow up and see what the moths look like. Or if you got little kids around, that would be a great way for them to just watch how caterpillars feed on plants and how they go into a cocoon and so on. You could do this with butterflies as well. But I encourage you to get out there, take some good quality pictures, and hopefully with the information we've provided today, you can have some good resources for answering the questions that you need answered. Of course, you always have your county extension agent that you can contact, and they have access to all of the specialists and resources at the university, and I encourage you to do that as well. And as I said at the beginning, all these websites I've showed you and more are on a list that we'll be posting to Aggie Horticulture that you can go back and you can visit a little bit later. Here is, I was a little slow on the movement there, but there you can see Abraham Lincoln's nose, 1/16 of an inch long. If you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer those. I know some of you have been chatting perhaps through this recording, but I'm also available online today as this is playing, and I would be happy to answer some of your questions as well. So we want to thank you for tuning in today on Aggie Horticulture Facebook Live. We will be back again. We're here on Wednesdays, usually for a briefer time, and then on Fridays for a more extensive presentation. Hope you have a good time and enjoy yourself out there in the garden.